Hey everyone, this is Jennifer Beamer, owner operator of Actually Diet Art by Science, and today I'm going to let you in on a little secret about art yarns. Come here. It's not as hard as it looks. I promise. So art yarn is one of those things that a lot of beginners are interested in making, but they feel they have this humongous uphill battle to get to. Now, making art yarn is not necessarily the easiest thing to start off with because you have to have some basic spinning principles down, but it doesn't have to be the very last thing that you create in your life. It could be something that's maybe your second skein of yarn, or maybe even halfway through your first skein of yarn you have an epiphany and then you start making fabulous art yarn. Beginners make great art yarn, whether they know it or not. The thin, the thick, the overspun, a little bit underspun, big poofy bits, that is an unrefined state of art yarn, and as beautiful as it is. So if you have a skein of that at your house, definitely look at it in a new light because it'll open up new doors for you in the art yarn creation world. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the thick and thin art yarn, because basically it is one of the yarns, it's one of the easiest to make, and it's a yarn that can be used for other different types of yarn. So you can ply with it, or you can use it to make things like coiled yarn, or like super coil yarn. And I'll show you some examples here. You can spin it to be a single. You can make it a soft spun where it won't, like the thin parts won't coil up so much, so it's really soft and sumptuous. Or you can make it really, really, really twisty so that as you're knitting, you can have those twisty pieces stick out. Or you can make something like coil yarn, which this is my first official sample that I've made of coil yarn. But first I want to talk about two general types of thick and thin art yarn. The first is just a gentle thick and thin. So this is something that I made from two little mini bats. I basically put one on top of the other, one bat on top of the other, and then I pulled them apart into long pieces so that the colors would sort of blend as I spun it. And as you can see, it's very gently thick and thin. So the thin parts, like right here, aren't as thick or aren't as thin as you would think, and these are, like, the contrast of the thick parts isn't as extreme as a traditional thick and thin yarn, and that's okay. This is just one example of how you can use a thick and thin yarn in a single, like that. And then I have another example here where I wanted to accentuate the thin pieces a little bit more, and I also wanted to make sure that both of these yarns were going to hold up to being yarn, for one, so you don't want it too unspun, but I didn't want it overspun so that these thin parts would kink up on themselves. So let's see if I can find a spot here that doesn't have a tie. Okay, so as you can see, this yarn here, it's thick here and thin here in the middle, and then thick and then thin. And that's basically what this yarn is, thick and thin. So the thin parts on this one are a little bit more pronounced than they were on the first one, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to really show off the thicker parts. But I also wanted to make sure that this was going to be a fairly balanced soft single. So I didn't add extra twist so that these places here, the thin places, they're not overspun and they're not kinky and they don't feel hard. They're very soft. And I did that with this entire skein. This is actually some dyed top that I made in the Antiqued Flowers colorway. So this just shows you that you can use dyed top and you can also use bats for making this type of yarn. So that's the basic thick and thin yarn. If you want to do a single, that's what your yarn will probably look like. And you know, you can vary how big those thick parts are and how thin those thin parts are based on your personal choices. Now let me show you another yarn that I made, which uses just the basic thick and thin yarn. I have a little bit extra twist in it because I plied it. And remember, when you ply something, you need a little extra twist so that when it is plied with something, it's a balanced yarn. And this is what I got. This I decided to ply with a silk thread in purple silk thread, and I even wanted to go the extra distance and add sequins. And sequins are really easy to add to a project like this. I just threaded them onto the silk thread, and when I applied it with the yarn, I just every 1.5 yards or 2 yards or so, I put a sequin next to the fiber or next to the yarn as I applied it, and then it pretty much secures it there. And as you can see, this is my little project note. And as you can see, it turns out to sort of have this novelty yarn look that I think it's homespun. It's a commercial yarn. They also have something that's very similar to this. And you know, it's basically just the thick and thin yarn plied with the thread, and sequins are placed every so often to create this slightly textured yarn. And this was really, really easy to make. Once you get the hang of making a thick and thin yarn, it's really hard to not make anything else. It's in fact one of my favorite go-to yarns to make when I'm not making more traditional style, really even yarns. Now I wanted to show you this last example, and remember, I'm still a little bit of a beginner when it comes to making coil yarn. I'm still working on how to make them better and not feel quite as hard, but I still wanted to show you this because, you know, even though I'm, you know, very adept at spinning in general, there's still some things that I'm not a professional at, and this is one of them. So let's have a beginner show and tell, shall we? So this is a super coil yarn, and what makes this a super coil yarn is the fact that the thin pieces in between are also wrapped around the core yarn instead of just being plied. Now I can show you where I started real quick, hopefully. So I used a white core yarn because I didn't feel like dyeing it, and you can see here this part. This is how the thin parts would look. I'll do a side-by-side comparison. This is how the thin parts would look if I plied it like this. This is just a simple plied action. This is coiled. It's wrapped very tightly around the core yarn, so you can't see the core yarn here. And the slubby parts are also coiled in that same manner, like that. But this is one of those yarns that you can create if you know how to make a thick and thin yarn. Like I said, I'm still learning this process, so it will take me a few more attempts to really understand how to do the super coil yarn, so please look to the channel for a video about that in the future. But once you've learned how to do a thick and thin, I've noticed that there's a lot of other books that talk about how to make different types of art yarn, and a lot of them do start with having some mastery of the thick and thin yarn. So, in the next video, I will actually sit down with my wheel and show you how to do a thick and thin yarn from start to finish. And this is just going to be for making a basic single, so like one of these two yarns. Alright, and then in another video I planned to make a yarn that is plied like this one, and it will all, like the subsequent videos will sort of build on each other. So this is going to be kind of like a thick and thin art yarn making class. So the tips and like the tips and other information that I give you for how to make a thick and thin yarn will sort of add on to each other, so it's best to watch the video series in order. So if you're watching a later video, come back and watch this one. Anyway, so if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter and fan me on Facebook. I also have an Etsy site that has a lot of my dyed fibers and hand-carded bats, so you can go there and check it out, including some hand spun. And if you want to follow me on Instagram and Pinterest, all that's below. I also have a new blog that I've been posting to recently that sort of talks more about like other things that I'm working on, like personal projects, a lot of fiber related things. And so if you want to see what I'm writing about there, you can also visit the link below. And if you have any questions and comments or suggestions, you can post that in the comments, or you can shoot me an email in case you really want to have a good conversation. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!